Good evening, everybody. This is the Real GM, and this is the Real GM Live with the first episode of Think Like an Owner. I'm so excited to have you guys here with a new podcast, a different format, and a lot of different conversation and fun. Now, let me give you the backdrop to Think Like an Owner. It actually is a new book that I'm working on, actually with my first guest. And I'm going to be talking about what that really means. But what's unique and different about this podcast is not only will it be discussion, not only will it be time to highlight and uplift and edify and empower somebody, but I actually am going to take them through a simulated coaching. I'm actually going to be spending some time working with them on where they are right now. You'll see it. It's a different flavor, a different vibe, but it's going to be something that I believe will be beneficial. It'll be something that'll be completely different. And I believe it will attract a greater audience because I get a chance to confront real life stuff with real life amazing people. So I think when we are developing ourselves and growing, what we tend to do is appear to most people that we have it all together. Now, some of you all are lucky enough to do that, but there are that small minority of us that don't have it all together. And we don't have a problem with sharing that with people. As a matter of fact, that platform and what we like is exactly that opportunity. How can I grow? How can I get better? How can I be different when I'm done? So what I want to do tonight is I want to bring on my first guest, first episode ever, a lady who is actually a client of mine, actually is doing some amazing, amazing things. And she had to learn to think like an owner. And what's going to be unique and is having her talk to you about what that transition was like, what was necessary for her, what she had to do, how she had to be, the things that she really had to get accustomed to, the things she really had to get uncomfortable with, and some of the things that she's still facing and struggling with right now. So I want to bring up Jody. Mark, can you bring her up? Okay, there we go. Hello, Jody. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. How about you?
Fantastic. So this is Jody. Jody is an amazing, amazing a person, and what I love about her is that she just truly has this desire to completely shift. Now she does it sometimes hesitantly, and she does it sometimes reluctantly, and she doesn't mind at times being frustrated. And she's gone through the gamut. So we're going to talk about all that tonight. She's a trusted friend. She's a colleague, but she's also an impacting empath who wants to change people's lives. So we're going to talk about the challenges that come with being an empath. We're going to talk about, again, thinking like an owner, because I think part of true ownership is having a concern for other people. It's really having an understanding that people need you. And we're going to talk about what that really looks like, because there truly are some challenging mindsets that you have to embrace that really go against the norm. They actually go against what would seemingly be common sense. And I've always said what's common sense isn't always common. But we're going to challenge some paradigms here because they just don't work when it comes to being an owner. And the reason it don't work is because we have been trained in being an employee. And I'm not just talking about from a worker bee standpoint. I'm talking about from a mindset. Our approach to things is from an employee standpoint. There's never any true accountability outside of what's imposed on us by an owner. But I want to talk to you about thinking like an owner every day in your life and what that should look like and how you can really move that level of accountability. So, Jody, again, welcome to the show.
Thank you
And
for having me.
this isn't going to hurt. I promise you, it's not going to hurt.
Well, I've
Um,
been around you a few times, so it
exactly.
can't
So
be
you're
too
ready. You're
bad.
ready. But what I really want to do is give you a chance to tell everybody who you are and your background and what it is that you did to begin to move in this concept. What are
Hmm.
some of the things that you had to do, good, bad, and different? I think, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand about this platform and concept is the fact that transparency, vulnerability, authenticity is a must. If you're going to be around me, that's the only way it's going to be, because I'm going to make sure I delve deep into who you are to get that to come out. And like I said, Jody goes, not going to hurt, but it's been there before and she knows it. So tell them who you are, your background, tell them anything you want to know, because we're going to get into, again, this discussion, but part of it's going to be working through some of the things that you're still challenged with and some of the things that you're moving through. So share with them who you are.
First off, thank you again for having me here.
You're
This
welcome.
is exciting,
Good.
and I'm definitely grateful for the opportunity to, be challenged because I know that's what's coming.
It is.
So hi everyone. My name is Jody Watkins. I was born Jody Sherrill. I was born in Fernandina Beach, Florida, which is right north of Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I grew up. I went and spoke last year, and I started it off like this. I said, my dad left when I was 3. My mom remarried when I was 6. My stepdad killed my sister when I was 7. At 9, I was molested. At 16, I moved out. 18, I moved to Gainesville because I was homeless in my car. And literally everything it was just like one thing after the other. I thought I was going to play basketball, ended up going in the military at the age of, I was almost 22. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my backstory real quick. And when I was in the military, I was working on airplanes, but before I went in, I was going to get my degree in sports and exercise science. I really had a passion for learning about that because when I went to college to play basketball, I had to learn how to gain weight. I had to learn how to lift weights. I had to learn, we didn't learn how to eat better back then, unfortunately, but I got to learn, a whole lot. And so I was grateful for that. And I really just wanted to learn more, So anyway, I got my associates there. I couldn't keep going to school because I couldn't afford it, to be honest. So I moved back to Jacksonville, and I think, 6 months later. By then, I had lost a job. My car had broke down. There was just so much going on, and I really just needed to get out of here. And so I went to the recruiter. I said, I don't care where you put me. And don't ever do that if you're going in the military. I was grateful. I did have pretty good ASVAB scores, which is the test you have to take to get in the military. So they put me on airplanes, which I didn't know that until halfway into my tech school that I was going to be working on airplanes. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to learn about computers. And no, I went to a 50-year-old airplane. So that was fun. But I took a lot of baggage in the Air Force with me. And it was a train wreck. You can't run from your problems. That's what I learned. So now I'm into health coaching. I became a certified health coach back in 2013, certified personal trainer, and a certified nutrition coach. And the reason for that is because I watched my mom. My mom was dying, and I had to learn how to wean her off of some of her medications because they were making her sicker. So that's when I got into nutrition. She had multiple sclerosis, so I wanted to learn how to help her exercise. She couldn't really move that well, and dementia runs in our family too. So that's really how my journey started. I got into medical and did a whole bunch of stuff after that. But I always had that employee mindset, which was an issue later on. And we can probably get into that later, but that's a little bit about where I've been and what I do now.
I think people can hear that you have gone through a lot. And I think the part of this show that I want to really share with people is that when you look at people that appear to be, and that's not saying they're not, that appear to be in an upward trajectory and they're moving in the right direction, you never know what they've actually been through. And that's part of where I want this podcast to go. Justin mentioned, yes, your mindset is everything. And Justin is true. But I think that we oftentimes begin to get cliche about those things and only take them as commentary. Mindset is everything. Well, okay, great. I got you. But what's more? And that's what I want this podcast to be. It's a little bit more than that. No matter what your mindset is, you still have to act. You still have to apply.
Yes.
And that's a big piece of it. I think we get caught up in this whole thing about mindset. Is it critical? No question. And it is the basis for it. But I've watched people and I've seen people. And I've seen people only take it this far. They'll read the books. They'll do everything. I mean, literally, I know people that will audiobook themselves every single day. I know people that will do all the right things. They'll do the meditation. They'll do every single thing. But when it comes down to it, there's still something that doesn't connect.
Yeah.
Both you and I are believers, and we have a faith-based philosophy when it comes to building business. And what I share with people is there's one verse of scripture that really separated and changed my whole approach. to everything that I do. And it helps me with my coaching, but it helps me be accountable for my responsibility in it. And it's Mark 7:13. And it says, the tradition of man makes the word of God of none effect. Man's tradition makes the word of God of none effect. So even though we have these practices that we apply, man's tradition is greater than this mindset that we're creating. We will fall back into habits. Why? Because you become proficient in what you practice. And when you are trained to be a certain way, you don't realize what you're practicing. And you're practicing habits that aren't good, and you're trying to beat them with new habits. Jack Canfield.
Been there.
Yeah, Jack Canfield, and we're going to talk about that. Jack Canfield shared with me one time, and this is why it's so important. He likened this whole scenario to two sets of horses pulling in opposite directions. And he said, Grayson, that 5 sets of horses pulling this way, 95 horses pulling that way. 5 horses pulling this way, 95 horses pulling that way. He said, which set of horses are going to win every time? The 95. But here's what mindset is. It's in the 5 set. It's in the 5 horses. Motivation's in the 5 horses. All these things are in the 5 horses. Until we understand that we truly have to get the 95 horses adjusted, which is why there's got to be some application, because you become what you practice the most, not what you read the most. That's the foundation, but I've got to read it, then practice it. I've got to read it, then apply it. It's got to happen every day. It's got to happen every day, because now I have to get proficient in that. We get proficient in the attributing things. Like, for example, people will talk about affirmations. There's nothing wrong with speaking positive.
Right.
Big problem is that number one, do you really believe it? And number 2, are you actively doing things to reinforce it?
Yeah.
It's just one thing to affirm something. It's another thing to actually do it. And you and I talked earlier today about the book we're writing, Think Like an Owner. And one of the things I talked about was it's all BS. One of the chapters is all BS. And BS is belief systems. And the reality of it is your mindset is cluttered with previous belief systems, some that are unwritten. I'm listening to your backstory, and I can guarantee that a lot of what you went through, you tried to forget.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of what you
yeah.
tried to suppress. But here's the deal. It never went away, right?
Nope,
so
never
no
did.
matter what you did, it was still there. So here was the reality. It still affected you.
Oh, yeah.
You were doing everything you could on the other side to suppress it, get rid of it, think differently out of it. And your mindset was, it's behind me, but little did you know, it's still there.
Right.
It's still a part of it, right? So,
and I was good at it for a long time.
Because you practice it. And that's what I'm saying. You practice it. So here's the deal.
I wore that mask for a while.
What you were practicing was actually beneficial if it would have been in the right scenario.
Right.
So a lot of things we do, they're the right things to do. We just don't do them in the right space. We talked about, earlier, things that can happen in your life. And I was sharing with you earlier about Lucifer's responsibility in the kingdom. And he was the governing cherub. We literally have taken things that should be beneficial, and their application makes them non-beneficial. That when all this is going on with this COVID stuff, one of the things I would hear from people that were believers or faith-based people was this: all these sheeple out here, all these sheeple. I would hear this all the time, and I would hear this from seasoned Christians, right? And so I had a guy say to me one time, I said, Grayson, man, we got to get some of these sheeple. I said, hold on, pump the brakes. I said, let me ask you a question. What animal did Jesus use to describe us? He used sheep. So if Jesus used that as an example, there's got to be something about it. And the reality of it is sheep are trained to follow. There's nothing wrong with that if you're following the right voice. The problem is when you're following the media narrative, when you follow a made-up narrative, when you follow a counter-God narrative, here's the problem. You're so trained to follow that you do it blindly. And so when you look at us, we know how to follow. Problem is we following the wrong people. And when you begin to think like an owner, that's a real big part of you assessing and vetting your circle, Who are you listening to? Who are you following? Who are
Yeah.
those people that you are emulating? Because owners have to have a different approach. So you had all of that baggage. You had all of that stuff that went on. And here's the deal. It really wasn't baggage. It was what was defining you or what was going to define you. And we don't know
Right.
that. See, it's when we look back at it, we see the benefit and the value of it. But at the time going through it, it was nothing but destruction and devastation, right? So going through it, tell the people what it was or what were some of the things that really got you to realize that this wasn't working. What were some of the things that you did once you realized it wasn't working that began to move you in the right direction? Because we're still in that transition. We're
Yeah.
still in that process. So what were some of the things early on that had you even realize that you weren't in the right space?
Moving back to Jacksonville,
Okay.
we were stationed overseas. We were in Japan for a few years. So I got back to Jacksonville December of 2018. Before we moved, my business was great. I was training people. I had people, hire me for nutrition coaching because I was really passionate about that and teaching people. I love to provide education because I like for them to be able to understand the information so they can give it to other people. But when I moved back here, it was just daunting. I went from everybody knew who I was in a good way, right? Everybody knew who I was to coming back here. I was a face in the crowd. It was, our daughter and I were here. My husband he was stationed in New Mexico at the time. He had a year to retirement, and everything just seemed to be crumbling. I found out my military career was over, which I didn't plan that. I planned on retiring. That right there, I say, well, that was probably what really almost took me down because that was all I knew. I had been in for 15, almost 16 years. And I went to medical lab tech school. I spent 13 months there. I thought that's what I was going to be doing. I was going to be helping people, learning more medical stuff, whatever, right? So I come back here, everything was falling apart. And my daughter and I were kind of at each other's throats. She was 9 at the time. And it got to a point, I think it was after our stuff got delivered. It was she and I, we had a little 2-bedroom apartment. It was a small apartment and our stuff got delivered. And I tell you, we ran out of space for them to deliver everything. When I say I was at my wit's end in boxes, so then I went and worked at one of the big box gyms here, hated it. I was there for 2 weeks. I felt like I was part of the problem. It was the worst thing ever. So I left that position. And then it was just like one thing after the other. What I had never done was ask God to come into my life. So I tried everything else at that point, and I was literally battling depression. I mean, I would take my daughter to the bus stop, she would go to school, and I would go back to the apartment and do absolutely nothing. I never was that person. You can ask anybody that's ever known me. I was always the go-getter. I was always the go-to person in the military, wherever I was. So for me to just do that, that was different. Mm-hmm. And finally, I really don't know how long it took, to be honest. But one day I had nothing left. And I dropped to my knees in my apartment and I just said, Lord, if you're there, please help me. Mm-hmm. And that's where it kind of started. I just got chills when I said it. Every time I say it, it's like I get chills, but because I still feel that it wasn't that long ago. It was 2019. Mm-hmm. And after that, I kind of went through this journey of, okay, I'm going to try to get my business going. I hired a business coach, but it was systems, and those systems weren't working for me. But I was really trying. I was doing everything she was telling me to do. And so that wasn't working out. So I was like, okay, so I ended up meeting another guy. They had great hearts, but their stuff wasn't working for me. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I had nothing left. I was living off of credit cards. I had maxed out my credit cards now because I hired 2 business coaches and that didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And I started listening to a podcast called Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, mm-hmm. but these were like old shows from 2015. And I just started listening to it. Because I was like, how do I bring God into my business? How do I do this? I don't know. I'm new to this,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started listening, and I was listening to what they were saying and things like that. And a leap of faith, I had $500 left on a credit card, and they had a mentorship program that was $495. And I said, all right, Lord, we're going to try this out. And I did it. And that really helped me tremendously because it helped me start believing in myself. I'm not going to say it helped me believe in myself because I still had a long way to go. I wrote a book that year called Reclaim Your Life. I put my daughter on the cover, and I say it openly now, but I never admitted it back then. When I published that book, I rushed the end, and I published it because honestly, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I said, well, I want to leave something behind so everybody knows how to be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally put my entire health coaching, everything that I'd ever learned into that book. And I put her on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm still here, obviously. So I don't give up very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in me to do that, but
I think, I've listened to you, and everybody's watching. This is the podcast called Think Like an Owner, where we literally, I pull out what I'm hearing and move it into a different place. So as I was listening to you, you said things that employees would say. You said I was a face in the crowd. You said I was trying to fit in. You're saying that's all I knew. See, all these words, all these statements are an employee mindset.
Right.
When you have an owner's mindset, none of those things matter.
Right.
You matter of fact, you like going into a city where nobody knows you because that's an opportunity to get everybody to know you, right?
Yep.
So this is not how we are trained, and that's why no matter what somebody's mindset is, if I'm not accustomed to the protocol and practices of an owner, it doesn't matter how much money I make. We're both sports people, and I look at the amount of money that athletes make. Athletes make an enormous amount of money, yet they still would rather be employees than owners. They do not bring in themselves in a position to where they truly get it and understand it. So now you have situations in life where you guys are affluent. You're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world, yet you're still employees. So I want people to understand that it's status and all those things. They have mindsets to excel.
Yeah.
And when Justin put that on there, your mindset is everything. But these guys have mindsets to be high-paid employees. They don't have mindsets to be owners. So it really takes a different approach. Listening to the things that you did and things that you went through. One of the things that I grabbed when I first talked to you about that is I challenge you on the things that you say. I challenge you on those things because there's an approach that employees actually take. There's a built-in defeatedness where it is because they can't make decisions. It's not their business. So again, the one thing that an owner needs to do is he needs to think for himself. Right. And we've been trained not to do that.
Right.
So there's no surprise when it comes down to people struggling to make that new change, that new decision. Why? I'm just not accustomed to this. Yeah. I may be the hardest worker in the world. I may literally be willing to read every book in the world and actually do every seminar and take the risk like you did, because all those are components of that. But when it really comes down to it, I'm still wired to be a certain way. Yeah. And this is where I think, so many people struggle in their approach to trying to make a change. You're hardwired in a way that you don't realize you're wired.
And that's the thing. If you're not aware of it, you can't change it, right? We say that all the time.
Right.
And it took me a long time to become aware of it. But like you said, I was programmed. It was like, go to school, do this, do that. Even in the military, it was like school. I got to go to school. I got my master's degree. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I never got away from that because I didn't know anything else. I didn't even know any entrepreneurs ever, until I got here. And so it really just it was a journey, and it's been a journey the entire time, but I'm grateful for all of it because it's allowed me to be a better person and show up better.
And you're still on it because here's what has to happen. Everybody that's watching now and everybody's going to watch later. Here's what has to happen. you have got to realize that ownership implies a different level of accountability.
Yeah.
Ownership implies a different level of commitment. We're talking today, one of the chapters in the book is working on yourself more than you work on your business. And
Yeah.
again, that's counterintuitive to most people because they think the work has to be put in the business. No, the work has to be put on in you, but we are not hardwired to do that. We're not hardwired to work on ourselves. Why? Because we have been trained that it's the work of our hands that produces things. And that's what because why? That's how you're measured by everybody else. Everybody else measures your output, your proficiency, your production. That's what they measure. So it's what I got to do. Well, as an owner, there's a different approach. There's a different mindset. And this is what I really want to bring through this new book and through sharing with people on here. There's so many people that have gotten to be successful in what they do, but they still have an employee mentality.
Yeah.
The inability for them to grow bigger, branch out. It's amazing that the comfort quality or the comfort quotient, it rings high in small business owners.
Yeah.
Small business owners get comfortable. They do.
I was one.
And
I was one of them.
Owners don't get comfortable. Owners are looking for the next thing to do. But what you'll hear is you'll hear conflicting information from people around you because they'll say things like, "Oh, you're doing too much,"
and that's
or "When are you ever going to be satisfied? When are you going to slow down?"
Yep.
Understand this. There's one concept in the Bible that is not there, and that's retirement. Retirement's not in the Bible.
Right.
Yet all of our approach to living life has us quitting at a certain age.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we're living to retire. That's not the way owners think.
Right.
True people that are doing stuff to change generations, to change the state of where things are, we don't quit.
We don't want to.
There's never we don't sleep, we don't quit. I mean, there's just a different approach. So when people have a mindset of comfort being their driving force, then they don't have an owner's mindset.
Right.
So when I look at you, you had a great work ethic, and you were one hell of an employee because that's what work ethic is. Work ethic is in the employee. Again, all these things we say are really directed towards employees.
Yeah.
They rarely ever function in the the ownership mindset, because owners don't think that way.
Right.
Owners think leverage.
Yeah.
Owners think empowerment. No, managers think a certain way, but owners think empowerment. How can I get you to be better? Adam was told to subdue and have dominion, right? That's what he was told to do. Subdue and have dominion. So all this is yours. What he had to do is create some leverage as to how it was all going to be handled, right? When he couldn't do that, we had some problems.
Right.
So here was somebody given the keys to the kingdom with an employee mentality. Here he was with God. He was communing with God, talking to God one-on-one, and somebody convinced him that God wasn't real. I mean, that would be like my son, somebody trying to tell my son I'm not his father.
Right. Yeah.
But that's what happens. Again, this is from the earliest onset. We didn't know who we were.
Yeah.
And so that's been the unfortunate way that we have lived our lives, not knowing who we are. So what we want to do through this podcast is really talk to people about who they are. And I love your transparency and vulnerability, because that in and of itself brings you closer to who you are.
Yeah. But when you talk about who you are, like for me, I mean to cut you off, but for me, I had to think about, as far back as I can remember, I always tested things. So I didn't always just go with the flow of everybody else. And I had to start thinking about that. And I'm like, well, that's when great things started happening. So why did I stop doing that? Why did I start trying to fit in? And so now I'm in a place where I'm like, well, I don't want to fit in with everybody else because I'm supposed to stand out. How long is it taking me to get there? But as long as you get there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's not just you. We're all born originals, but we choose to die copies. It's the power of influence. It's the power of narratives. And this is why we have to really assess on a consistent basis and a daily basis what we are thinking. We want people to like us. It was so funny to me. Somebody made a comment. I just think you're controlling and you're manipulative. I said, hold on, sweetheart. I said, there's no way. I said, you can call me anything else. That one's not going to work. And when you get to, my ex-wife had the nerve to say to me, you're never there for your kids. You know what? You can say some other stuff. That stuff you're not going to say. And I got to the place where I understood who I am. So when you know who you are, when people say something, no, that's not it. But employees will always embrace it because your opinion of them defines what their next step is.
Oh yeah, it used to bother me. It used to really, it would take me down when people would say stuff. And now that's how I knew. I was like, okay, I'm finally in that place where I can be like, okay, now it's time to excel, because now if somebody says something, I know who I am. You just don't know who I am. And if you don't want to get to know me, that's okay. It's all right. I know who I am.
What was it? Give me the two biggest things that you had to learn or that you had to begin to put in place with a new mindset of an owner. What were two things that you just, or even you still struggle with as an owner, with an owner's mindset? What are two of those things that you deal with? Now I'm going to give you some things that owners do just to help you jog your memory. You. One of the things that owners do is owners remove emotional attachment to outcomes, and owners remove time frames for things to happen. One thing owners do is owners do not worry about making decisions. Employees want to know if the decision is right or wrong or good or bad. Owners just make the darn decision.
Right.
And deal with it when it comes.
Deal with it later, yeah.
Right. Owners don't hire just everybody.
Right.
But employees seem to just kind of partner with whoever shows up.
Yep.
So what are some of the things that you really had to really begin to look and say, I got to do that better. If I'm going to have an owner's mentality, if I'm really going to embrace this, what are some of the things that what are a few things that I really need to tackle first? Because what people don't understand is they try to tackle everything. You can't eat an elephant but one small bite at a time. But they try to tackle everything. So what were some of the things that you put out there first that you really, I got to really do this first?
I had to go on a journey with my mental health. And I like to talk about that freely because there's a lot of, especially veterans, there's such a stigma, but I mean, anybody really, there's such a stigma behind going to therapy. Guess what, guys? Most of us need it, and it's okay. Right. So I will say it was definitely being willing to swallow my pride and say, I need help. So that was the first thing that I started doing. I'm still going through, I have regular therapy that I go to, and then I'm still going through one that helped me uncover the childhood trauma that I had. It was in my subconscious, my reticular activating system. It stayed back there. And, it just stayed back there and messed with me. So we had to start uncovering that. And I didn't know how to do that on my own. There was no way that I would have done that on my own. So I would say that was definitely the biggest thing. The next thing was valuing myself, learning that I'm worthy and I'm worthy of good people around me. I used to think that things were too good to be true, but now I know that they're not, and I'm deserving. And that was definitely the second thing, because now when I went and I've onboarded some coaches. I love mentoring other personal trainers. I think that's my space now, is just helping them and helping them learn things that I had to learn the hard way. So I'm doing that now, but this is the third time that I did it. And this time though, I was picky, but even with clients now, I'm picky. I'm not the person for everyone, and not everyone is the person for me. And I had to get to that point, but it took me a long time, because at one point I said, I just wanted to help everybody. I can't help everybody. I'm not for everybody. And that's okay. So I had to learn how to collaborate with people too, and just say, hey, if I'm not the one, maybe you can try this other person over here. Maybe you guys will mesh a little bit better, and be okay with that.
Right. And that's a big part about an owner. I have to pick who's right and I may walk away from what you might choose.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta know, but I have to know what's right for me. I have to know what's right for my
Right.
business. I gotta know what's right for my, for my company.
Yep.
Cognitive dissonance. Dissonance says believing believing one thing but doing another. We have to really understand that this is why mindset in and of itself is more than just the way I think.
Yeah.
Because it's saying one thing and doing another, believing one thing and doing another. When you are putting together this new framework, I've got to really believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
How do I build belief? By repetition.
Every day.
I believe. Yeah.
Everyday work.
And what's funny is, and I've shared this with people before, the Bible says that without faith, it's impossible to please God. But faith and belief are not the same thing. Yet the church uses them interchangeably. By definition, they're two different things.
Right.
Belief, by definition, is accepting that a concept is true or real. Faith is really understanding the concept of what you don't see. So here's the deal. In Christianity, it only takes belief to get to heaven. The Bible says you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart, God raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. See, belief can get you to heaven, so people get confused because it takes faith to live here.
Yes.
See, people want to live here with belief. No, it takes more than it takes faith.
Yeah.
And faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But employees have to see everything. You talked about systems, and one of the big things that I can't stand about e-courses and all these things that people are, all they're doing is using what you're used to, and that's being told what to do. These things they're not teaching you to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Because here's what happens. If I empower you, I run the risk of not needing you. And what happens is that I need you to pay my bills. No, there's a whole different concept when you're an owner. When you're an owner, you're looking for the next revenue stream.
Yeah.
This is a completely different mindset. So as you guys are watching and thinking this through, this isn't any more than a different perspective. You need to have an owner's perspective. Now, if you've never had one, it's going to challenge your current way of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not going to see it in that way. And you can't because you have brought employee mentality to the table. Owners have to approach things completely different.
Yeah.
Owners have to be willing to assume all the risk. Employees don't want to assume any of the risk. Owners don't make excuses. Employees look for excuses. So you have to ask yourself, true and real, what are you allowing yourself to slide through on?
Yeah.
What are you not holding yourself accountable about? What is it that you're not really challenging yourself with? And how quickly did you become comfortable? When we get to these, and again, it takes introspection. It really takes you looking at who you are for real. And owners usually confer with other owners.
That's it too. Yeah.
Owners don't spend strategy time with employees.
And that, yes.
So
yes. And that's where you got to be careful.
Completely.
Be careful. Know who you have in your circle. That was definitely the biggest game changer for me too. Like my circle is completely different now.
Because here's the deal. The people in your circle have really mastered this one thing or close to mastering it. Mm-hmm. They don't make decisions emotionally. You can't if I'm an owner, I can't think emotionally.
Yeah.
I've got to think strategically. I have got to think with clarity. I can't be moved by emotion because my business is depending on the thought and action that I take.
Yeah.
It's really built on. So I can't. And what we've had is we've had people get into business being led by emotion. It doesn't work. And they have gotten frustrated with business itself. They've gotten frustrated with everything. Well, hold on a minute. It's because you brought emotion to the table.
And that's where I was when I literally started falling apart. That's exactly where I was. I was just operating emotionally.
Right. And it's not to say that we're not human beings and we don't have emotions. You just can't do certain things emotionally successful.
Well, I had to learn how to step back a little bit. You
Yeah,
know?
even in sports, guys get emotional when they come out the locker room. They hype,
Yeah.
they ready to go. That emotion got to go.
Well, it's just like I tell people all the time, motivation's temporary. Discipline is what
No
gets you
question.
there.
No question.
Motivation's temporary. You can have motivation. It's not going to last, right? Well, you see it every year, especially at the gym, right? The gym gets packed.
Correct.
March, it starts fiddling out. They had motivation for 3 months.
Because there was an emotional trigger that they wanted to satisfy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that emotional trigger causes you to act but never sustain.
Yeah.
Because if
You
you
got to
look
have discipline.
look at the movements that have happened in the last 2 years, they disappeared and fizzled out. They were all because they were driven by a narrative.
Right.
And what we have to do is we have to really begin to understand how to develop and drive our own narrative. Now, the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen that are watching and watch later, is that's not easy. It's not easy to do what you've never been trained to do. And most people engage and they try to engage with the mentality that they have. And they think that they're just going to switch it by reading a few books. No, it's going to take time. One of the things that ownership embraces is the time element required.
Mm-hmm.
There are no such things as overnight success. I don't know if any of you guys watch.
Not at all.
I don't know if any of you guys watch TikTok, but there's a comedian on TikTok who's literally risen to the ranks of notoriety, and that's a guy named Jason Banks. And Jason Banks does skits with Blind Adam. Oh, thanks, Chuck. My man Chuck Nichols giving a shout out to the show. But Jason does caricatures and improv with these three things. He's got Blind Adam, he's got Derek his son, and he's got Chad. So he does these scenarios. And so he came to Jacksonville and he was at the Comedy Zone. I said, man, I gotta go see this dude because I watch him on TikTok every day. But my first reservation was, how is he going to be funny without the other two people? Because it can't be three people on stage. And one of the things that he shared when he walked out there was the fact that he had been doing stand-up 15 years before this. Most people only recognize him from his time on TikTok.
Yeah.
But the first thing he said was, I've been doing this 15 years. He said, and when COVID happened, I got a phone call that said, we're canceling all shows. And he said he found himself in a hotel room and he found a little app called TikTok. And he said, I downloaded it. And this is what happened. But most people that see him on TikTok don't know he did this for 15 years before.
Right.
So he's been developing.
Nobody knows the backstory. That's
Correct.
The thing. That's why I tell people all the time. I'm like, you see what you see. You see the win. You see the whatever, right? You see the highlight reel. But you don't see the backstory. You don't see all the work that put in there. Like I tell people, I'm like, you don't see me waking up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, putting in work before you even say hello to me.
Right. And
you
owners,
too. And
here's where owners make a mistake. They start telling their backstory to their employees.
Yes.
Who don't care. So
right.
now they struggle with the fact that this person doesn't seem to resonate with my struggle. They don't care about your struggle.
Yeah.
They think that you are there to provide for them so they can have a business and a job. So when we're talking about this whole mindset, and we're almost done, we're talking about this whole mindset of thinking like an owner. Guys, here's what I'm going to do for the next few weeks. I'm going to bring people on just like Jody that are in this transition, that have made some life-changing decisions, that have made some significant strides, and consistently show them to you so that you can see that here's where I'm still going. Here's what I'm still working on. Here's what I'm still needing.
Yeah.
Here are the things that I'm readjusting and reassessing. I have to look at these things because they're so important. And I want this show to be that way. I want this podcast to be, and I don't want it to be celebrity driven. I can get folks on here, but you're celebrities. Why? Because you're more relatable. When you shared what you shared, you touched on your backstory, and so many people can relate to a piece of it, all of it, a significant part of it. And what you tend to do as an owner is by showing your vulnerability, you give people the energy and courage and enthusiasm to go for what they want.
And that's what I want to do. I tell people that there's absolutely nothing that I'm doing or will do that no one else can do. You just have to want it. You really just have to want it. And you have to believe in yourself. Because we can all do these things.
Right. And yet, again, God is no respecter of person. But it's not about what you're capable of or what you're willing to. It's literally what you are going to do and what you're going to be accountable for.
Yeah.
And I've got to work in the different approaches to, I've got to work in the different mindsets that are required for this. Because the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required, and of him will much be asked. You really want to go to this next level and be where we need to be. Here's what it's going to take. Here's what is totally.
Be ready, folks.
Exactly. And a lot of people, and that's why, look, and I tell folks all the time, there is no crowd at the top of the mountain. The crowd is at the bottom. So why would you not go for the top? There's not many people trying to get there. This is why there are not many owners.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's willing to do everything it takes to be an owner. Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, they're not ready to do
it. It takes all of it.
They give it lip service, but they're not going to do it.
Right.
Because they're so worried about
the talk.
Yeah, but they're so worried about approval and fitting in.
Yeah.
That even if they do subscribe to a higher level of financial gain, they still want to be in a certain crowd. You know, it's the one thing that I love about.
And some will swear up and down that they don't.
Correct.
Like, they'll swear up and down like, no, that's not me. I don't want to follow everybody else. I'm an individual. I'm this, I'm that. But then you look at them and you're like, no, you're following.
Completely following. And again, here's why. Because they're hardwired that way.
Right.
So they think that if I think a little different and I read a little different, I'm still not hardwired that way.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have folks around you and say, hold on, do you realize you're still doing that?
You got to be challenged. Yeah, you got to have people around you that challenge you. And you got to be accepting of it. That was one of the things, too, I had to work on, where it was like, you know, and it's still a work in progress, right? Because we have to learn how to accept constructive criticism from other people that have been doing things longer, if that's where we want to go. And it's not easy to do, but we can.
Trish just asked you a question. How did you change your circle?
It changed. I didn't change it. I moved in the forward direction. And as I kept moving forward, my circle changed. And I will tell you now, that was the best thing that could have happened. Now, the other people, I didn't say that I will never speak to you again, right? Like I'm not that type of person. I'm always going to be here and I'm going to take everybody with me that wants to go. But if you don't want to go, I'm not going to try to pull you. So yeah, my circle just changed. You know, and keep going forward and see what happens. Keep climbing that mountain and see what happens.
Right, and that's the big thing, Trish. That's the big thing. When Jim Rohn said, in order for things to change, you must change.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, when you change, if you're focused on your change, you won't focus on who's not there. You'll just wake up and see who is and who isn't.
Exactly.
Jerry Rice, obviously, is arguably one of the greatest football players of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry used to invite Walter Payton too. They used to invite their peers out to train with them. And Jerry would do a rigorous mountain training. It was, absolutely rigorous. And after a while, guys were like, you know what? That's why you're the best. I'm not doing this. It shows where the separation comes in because you aren't willing to do this. Walter Payton used to leave folks on that mountain. They were like, look here, man, I'll just be second.
Yeah.
When you really start to train to do the thing differently, Kobe said it in one of his speeches before he died. He was talking about why he was better. And he said it wasn't necessarily his skill set. He said, here's what happens. He said, here's my schedule as a pro. We have practice. People come home and they come back to the second practice. He said, here's what I do. He said, I get up at 4:00 in the morning and I'm at the gym and I'll practice from 4:30 to 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm back home at 9. I take a nap, I eat, and I'm back at the gym at 11:30, 12. I'm going 12 to 2, 12 to 2:30. I'm back home, take a nap, get some dinner, and I'm back at the gym at 4:30, and I'm there until 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
He said everybody else gets in 2. 1 they don't even want to be at.
Yeah.
and I'm getting in 3.
Right.
He said, so here's the deal. If I'm getting 3 to your 1, I'm just going to be better. Why? I'm doing more. He had an ownership mentality of his talent. What's up, Dave Bowlby?
Separation.
Correct.
You're
So
separating yourself.
correct. And you don't have to. They have every opportunity to be in the gym with you.
Yeah.
They won't come.
Exactly.
They won't come.
I tell people,
And
you know how many people I'm like, hey, come work out with me. Like, people all the time. They'll be like, I want to work out with you. Okay, cool. I'm at the gym at this time. How many people actually end up showing?
No. When else do you go? No, that's
seriously.
when I go.
So that's another thing. We can't wait on people.
Mm-hmm.
We can't wait on other people. And I had to learn that too. You know, I can't wait on everybody else, you know, because if I'm going forward and you still want to be back there, okay, go. That's cool. But I'm going this way. So I'm going to find the runners. We're going to run together and you can catch up later. I'll still be here. I love you. Right.
Trish, you keep moving. Trish, you keep moving. Your circle will change, but we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
When we tell people what's required to do, it's one thing to understand. It's another thing to effectively do it. Trish said, I waited a week for a friend to go to the gym with me. It's just me. And see, again, because we're trained for inclusion. We're trained to be included. She said she waited a week for a friend to go to the gym with her. Well, that's a week you didn't go to.
Don't wait. Yeah. Just go. Go with the people that are already going, Trish.
But we're hardwired. But we're hardwired for acceptance, and we're hardwired for compatibility.
Right.
We're hardwired for communal relationship. That's what we're.
But that's the thing, though, Trish. I guarantee you go, because people come into the gym. I'm in the gym in the mornings. People come in there. I speak to people all the time. You'll meet people. You will meet. Keep going, and you will meet people. Don't wait on the people that are pulling you back from your goals. And it doesn't matter what that looks like. I'm definitely, and I'm saying this from my heart because I've been there and I know it. If you wait on those people, you're never going to be able to accomplish your goals because you're still waiting. They're not ready yet. And that's okay. But you got to keep going.
So she said this, I went, but kept waiting for her to show up. See, again, we
waiting on the wrong person.
we're literally wired that way because of our lack of training in who we are as an individual.
Right.
We evaluate ourselves based on the people who appear to have the same interests.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to decide, here's where I am. And what we have to do is do more teaching and more training on what's in you. And again, if I take you to the Bible, the Bible will tell you greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. Ephesians 3:20 will tell you that now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in you.
In you.
Dunamis power is the power of the Holy Spirit. It's the power that's in you. So again, because we don't understand what our DNA is and how we are naturally wired from God, but how we are hardwired around the world, we just got to get back to our original blueprint, get back to our original wiring, and get that done. So, Jody, I want to thank you for being my inaugural guest on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Think Like an Owner. We're going to do some amazing stuff on Wednesday nights. Guys, share the video with people. If you know somebody who you feel like wants to be on, and if you are someone who is wanting to go to the next level and you are in that valley of decision, let's get on here too. Let me get you on here and let me get you talking about where you are, because the only thing we're looking for, results and restarts. That's all we're looking for. We're looking for implementation and execution so that you can get some things done. And we want to talk about repetition because repetition will give you a reputation. So thank you for joining me. I will see you next Wednesday. I think my guest is going to be Sean Taylor of a TaylorMade Fitness. But I'm not sure yet, but I think so. And that'll be a powerful, powerful episode. You'll see me on Friday, myself and Dr. Adrian Gentry, right here again on Change Your Perspective. We do that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7:15. He's on with me on Fridays. And this Sunday, look for Men Unfiltered. We're going to be talking about preferences. It's going to be interesting and fun. So I am the real GM, Grayson Marshall Jr., the metacognition maven, the guy to get you to think like an owner. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will definitely change. I love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. I'm out.
The Real GM Live, teaching you to think like an owner, is the podcast engagement that's going to shift thinking for the next decade. Do you want to be challenged, empowered, enlightened? Do you want to make critical thinking your default method of how you respond, instead of it all being emotional? Do you want to be equipped to navigate the New World narrative without fear or concern? Then listen to The Real GM Live as he handles controversial conversation with eloquence, poise, and grace. No more waiting. Here is The Real GM.